Hi everyone, this is Joyce Polino Crane. I am the news director at WestfordCAT. I'm here today with Chris Becerra. He is the Municipal Services Manager of Republic Services. And you represent, Republic is the company that picks up our recyclables in town.
We are, correct.
And next to you is Ellen Hardy, who is the co-chairman of the Recycling Committee, along with Charles Stark, who is not here today. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're here to talk a little bit about what's going on in the industry. And Chris, you are full of information on the market and what's happening. And I thought we'd start with you and just explain a little bit about, well, let's take a step back and talk about what generated this whole discussion today. I got an email from a local resident who it turns out is on well water, and he had some questions about why the Recycling Commission is asking residents to do more with their recyclables, such as washing containers better and so forth. And so, Ellen, you contacted that resident, and it launched this discussion. So do you want to tell us a little bit about what his issues were before we go to Mark?
Yes.
To Chris?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. What this resident said was that he was an avid recycler and he wanted to do everything right, but this new empty, clean, dry motto had him wondering whether or not he was in fact having to use more water than, as you just said, one resource for another, and was that worthwhile? He was also concerned about the fact that he didn't want to have to wash his trash, were his words, which I thought was an interesting phrase. And so it was a good time to sit back and say, we're not asking that everything be perfectly clean to go in your recycling bin. We're asking that it be, quote, free of contaminants is the term that's used in the trade, which means if there's still ketchup in the bottle, pour it out. But you don't have to have them squeaky clean. So we hope that through this program, we can let that resident and everyone else know really where the bar is in this day and age in terms of having Westford's recycling be acceptable to Republic and to the vendors that Republic sends it to, sells it to, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, Chris, tell us why this is all happening, why the changes.
Yeah, so I think we got to kind of back up a little bit in history, and most of our recycling product that was generated at the curb for the better part of the last probably 30 years ended up in China, and over the last couple of years, China has really kind of changed their policy on how much contaminant they want in the recycling stream. So they, a few years ago, they kind of set a date on when they would enact that policy, and that was about the first quarter of this year, I believe, actually maybe in May, where China just at that point kind of closed their doors to all the recycling product in this country because they just didn't want the volume of contaminants. So what that led to was basically this isn't only a town issue or a Massachusetts issue, but it was a countrywide issue on what do we do with all this product.
And why do you think China changed their policy?
Well, they were trying to really, I guess, quote unquote, clean up their country. I think they changed their ideology, they changed their philosophy on I think who they wanted to be, and what they did was they just didn't want the world's trash to be just kind of brought to China. Because there was a lot of contaminants in the recycling that would end up going into China. So they closed their doors, and most people in this country kind of got caught a little flat-footed, and we didn't really. There wasn't a lot of markets to take it to, and there still isn't today. There's certainly other markets out there, Indonesia and Vietnam, India, and some even staying in this country. But the capacity that China was taking, it dramatically shrunk. And even the markets today that we have they're still not able to handle the capacity.
So you told me before the camera started rolling that the cost of processing the recyclables shot way up.
Yeah.
From $0 to $60 to $80 per ton?
Yeah, and then part of the issue is in order for us to try to keep the material cleaner, the effort and the labor and the capital that got put into these recycling facilities caused the cost to go up. The processing cost of the material is skyrocketed to try to get it cleaner, whether it was more manpower or more equipment. By slowing down the process, it would take a lot more effort to process it. So, and then with the shrinking capacity, the other outlets or the other countries that it was going to, they could also be more selective. They want the recycling to be as clean as possible to have the best value. So what it did was it caused a incredibly rapid and high spike in the cost of the recycling material. You only go back a couple of years ago. You don't have to go back too far, and recycling was it was zero cost. And in some respects, we're actually getting paid for it.
Right.
In some markets today in Massachusetts, we're seeing $60, $80, $100 a ton per ton to get rid of the recycling material. And in some cases, it is outpacing the cost of the trash.
Ellen,
Yeah.
where does this leave the towns?
Spending a lot more money than we used to.
Yeah.
When we started the recycling program in Westford back in the 1980s, Joyce, we first started with just recycling paper.
Right.
It was the heaviest item in the trash. We were paying per ton to take our trash to an incinerator, so we said, let's take out the heaviest item, and that was newspaper. And we were getting paid a pretty penny when we collected that one Saturday a month down on Route 110. So the economics were so simple. It cost you money if you put it in the trash, and it generated money for the town if we collected it. That's been turned upside down, as Chris just explained. So at the town meeting that the town just had in October of this year, we had to appropriate $80,000 more money to get rid of recycling, and that just didn't used to be the case. It was a win-win. So the town is spending a lot more for recycling. It doesn't cost us as much to recycle as it does to throw it in the trash, but it's getting very close. So one thing that residents say is, well, then why are we recycling?
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Well, back in the early 1990s, the Department of Environmental Protection created what are called waste bans. And it is against it's not state law, but state policy and regulation. We cannot throw paper, cans, plastic. They cannot go in your trash, or they can be rejected at the incinerator. So we don't have the option of just saying, well, forget it. After 30 years, we're just going to throw it in the trash.
Correct.
So it's a fascinating time to be involved in this, but very frustrating.
I wonder if the DEP is looking into this at this stage of
Chris
the
can
game.
answer that.
Do you know?
I don't think anybody's taking the position to stop recycling. It's it's still the right thing to do, right? So I think, and I think also if you think back, think about the effort Westford went through, or the other communities, to put in these recycling programs. It took a lot of education, a lot of resources, a lot of money to get them up and running. I don't think a community wants to go and pull back on that. And if the market improves in the future, I don't think you want to necessarily be the ones where you try to start it up again. Because and like you said, it is banned. You can't put it in the waste stream. You can't landfill it. So it is. I mean, it's still the right thing to do. The other thing, just as far as the cost, if you think about it from a collection standpoint, a lot of the commodity value back then, years ago, used to help subsidize the collection of the recycling programs. And that's one of the reasons some of the costs are going up. We used to share in a lot of the value in some of our contracts, where we would keep a piece of the proceeds. We would give some back to the city or the town, and it would help
really?
subsidize the collection. Today, that's not the model. It just doesn't work anymore because of the cost of the recycling. So we're almost treating it independently: a collection cost and then a processing or recycling cost. They're almost being separated now because the volatility in the recycling commodity number is just, it's too volatile to kind of book inside that collection cost.
So if China's not taking the recyclables, where are they all going?
Yeah, so like I earlier said, there's some markets opening up in other countries. We are seeing some stuff go to Indonesia and Vietnam and India, some again here in the U.S. But again, they're not collectively collectively as a group still able to handle that volume.
Some of it is going to the incinerator. There are companies that are getting permission from the Department of Environmental Protection to be able to send certain commodities to the incinerator for a one-time.
There's been some waivers.
Waivers. Thank you.
To allow that, yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
but
but they've been
the exception.
small and with time constraints, yeah. And that happened because what would happen is, the market dried up so much to be so much volume, nobody could move it. They were just piled up, and it was becoming a safety issue or it become contaminated.
So it's not getting recycled, it's being treated like trash.
No, most is. There were certain waivers in certain time periods where we've seen that happen, but that's a very small volume,
The
from what I
companies,
understand.
for example, that collect paper, their entire property now is covered with bales of paper, waiting for the markets to change when it can be processed and turned back into the Harry Potter books, which is where ours used to ours used to go.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of timing, don't you think, Chris? That
Yeah.
that eventually the industry will catch up and new facilities will exist in this country. But how many years does it take from the time you decide to plan a facility?
I wish I had a crystal ball.
5 or
but
6 years, probably.
Yeah, I think over time, markets will develop.
Exactly.
I think they'll get, they'll certainly mature, and you'll see new capital get put in, and facilities get upgraded, and more technology. What's that time frame? I don't know.
No.
But I guess we'll wait and see.
So what's important for Westford recyclers to understand is that we are in this sort of twilight zone of recycling, and we just ask the residents to bear with us and make Westford's recycling as fine a quality as it can be. You don't have to wash it with your dishes, but so that when the markets do turn around, Westford is poised and ready to be among the communities that are right there at the top, as we have been in the past, to have a product that is marketable. And this is what our chairman, Charlie Stark, spoke about when he spoke at the town meeting, is that this is a commodity we're selling. It's like pork bellies or oil.
Yep.
And if we have the best in the market, Westford will be the one that is at the ready when things turn around.
Yeah, and to add to that is what the market is demanding now is the cleaner the product, the better the value.
Exactly.
Right. So that's again not just Westford and not just Massachusetts. It's a countrywide campaign. And the cleaner we can get it, plastic bags are probably as we spoke, probably the worst thing you can put in there. Not only is it, there's no resources to go through a plastic bag with recycling, but it does a lot of damage to recycling processing equipment. That's usually the number one worst thing in there, what it does. But the cleaner it is, the better value it becomes, and then end of the day, as a town or a state or as a country, the better we get, ultimately it's going to improve the cost of it, and for towns like Westford, the better it gets, the less expensive it will become, and on the end of the day, it's tax subsidized, so it impacts right down to the residents. So I think if everybody can do their part to keep it clean, I think that's what we're challenged with what to do with right now.
I think one of the things that happened, Joyce, it's been so interesting to watch this because I've been up to my ears in Westford trash since the landfill closed in 1985, was that every year there were more commodities that could be accepted. First it could only be newspapers, but you couldn't put in phone books, and then they accepted phone books. And then they went to what's called single stream, which all of a sudden we could put everything in one container. We didn't have to put our newspapers in one place and our cans and that was done to accommodate the homeowner, I believe, because they wanted more and more commodity so that they had more to sell. So at one point, the motto really was, if in doubt, throw it out. Put it in the bin, and the people who pick it up and sort it will decide at the other end what's good and what's bad. Now they're saying to the homeowner, oh, we need to go back to you. You need to make the decision in your kitchen about what's good and what's a baddie. And that's a real, it's not quite a 180, but it sure is a change
Right.
for families that thought they had it down pat.
So it's going to take some education.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you also got to remember. I mean, China had a pretty high tolerance
Absolutely.
for contaminants in the recycling. So I don't want to say, I think China maybe bred a little bit of laziness because people just really didn't have to do a lot. They just put it in and it got recycled. Today, that's not the case, and with China not being there, and the other markets wanting it cleaner, where does it really begin? It begins in the home.
Right.
Is really. Yeah.
And the state actually is doing, I think you say it's education, and that's exactly what the Recycling Commission is here for, is to try and get every household to understand the rules.
Yeah.
The state has put together a really nifty new program called Recycle Smart. And I have the link, and maybe you can put that up later. It's recyclesmartma.org.
Yeah.
And they've come up with this wonderful thing called the Recyclopedia. And when you get to Recycle Smart MA, you can type in anything that might be in your trash, and it will tell you
Correct.
whether or not it's recyclable or not.
It's a great tool.
And what they've tried to do, and I'm sure Republic has been in on this, is to get all the haulers and all the facilities that the recycling go to come up with a statewide standard. So if you move from Hollis to Westford, you don't have to relearn what's recyclable.
Correct.
So that's one thing that's happening at the state level that's already in place that Westford residents could take advantage of. And as a commission, we're working about what we do at the local level. But that is in place, it exists, not perfect yet, but it's a long way toward being a great educational
Yeah,
tool.
it's a great tool.
Yeah.
That sounds
I've
wonderful.
used it. Yeah.
Ellen, can you tell us a little bit about the history of recycling in Westford? When it all? You mentioned when it started, but weren't you there from day one? You seem to have.
I was. I
to
made
be
a motion at
tireless in
town
this.
meeting, and that did it. The state told us, Joyce, that we had to close our landfill or our dump, which was down on Cold Spring Road, now called Bluebird Hill. And we knew that it was going to close in August of 1985. That was the date we were given. So the town voted, the town meeting decided that they would join what at that point was called Neswick. It was a consortium of 28 towns that would all build an incinerator. We would all take our trash there, and it would generate energy. We would actually get money back from burning our trash. So then the question became, how do we get the trash up to Andover? North Andover.
North Andover,
North Andover, where it was.
Where the incinerator is still.
There were two options. Just have the truck go to every house in town and the truck drives up there, or have a transfer station, which was sort of like our old dump. Residents took their own trash to that site, and then one hauler took it all up there. We couldn't find a place in Westford to site a transfer station. A committee looked for 3 years. So the selectmen and town meeting decided to do curbside collection. And then several of us looked at, well, we're paying, at that point it was $29 a ton. We thought that was a lot of money
Right.
to get rid of the trash. So we were the Solid Waste Advisor Committee. I was on that. And we recommended the selectmen that if we take the heavy things out that are recyclable, we'll be sending less to the incinerator. So that's how it started, with the newspapers first. Then we started taking glass, metal, and plastic. Also
But not all plastics, right? Because initially you
at
had
that point, right, we
you
could only
had
do
to look
ones
at
and
the
twos.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
certain
which
number.
is basically what you want now again is the sturdy plastic, the detergent bottles, and
Is that going to change, Chris, or are we going to take out some of the plastic, some of the higher number plastics?
It's funny. Years ago, we used to. It would seem like it was governed by the triangle with a number, right?
Yes.
So that was always confusing. It was even confusing to people in the industry on what numbers, and everybody may have had a different. And it would change even based on communities too. I think, like you said, if you go to the recyclesmartma.org now, that does away with all the numbers.
I see.
It's by product because the products have evolved and changed so much over the years on what's really recyclable. So that is really the best tool to use to see what is recyclable. And you key in the item, it gives you a picture, tells you yes or no. It's a really great tool. So
I think I better go there.
well, maybe. I think we're talking more about today. It's probably today not more about quantity, but it's more about quality.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's what most people are looking at today, to get a good quality recycling product. Not years ago it didn't matter, or get everything we possibly could in there. You know, because glass is that's a tough recycled product today. There's not a lot of markets for that, but it's still in the recycling stream.
Is that right?
Yeah. There's a pretty.
I'm so surprised to learn to hear that. Why
Right.
is that?
Well, I don't think there's been a lot of development in what to do with it. You know, there's not a lot of outlets to recycle it, on what to turn it into. You know, some people used to grind it up and use it for, aggregates in the streets and stuff, but there's still not a lot of demand for it. So, as maybe the markets mature and people come up with different ways on what to do with glass to recycle it, then I think then it'll become, the value will change. But today there's not, and it's a heavy item too. But right now it is in the recycling stream. Nobody's banned pulling it out, and we're still taking it. So, and the recycling facilities are still accepting it.
I do want to clarify that Republic in Westford collects only recyclables. The trash is collected by Acme.
That's
Ellen?
right. It's a completely different company.
Completely
No
different
connection there.
company.
Two
So,
different contracts, Joyce.
and Chris, you were telling me that in Chelmsford, where I live, ironically, you only collect trash,
Right.
and some other company collects
Right.
the recyclables.
Right. Just the opposite. Yeah.
And
yeah.
we're the only two towns.
It's
in
a little
which-
unique to have the towns split on the whether the waste oil and the recycling. It's it's okay. We do it, but it's probably a little bit unique, but it works. So we're happy to do it.
So this question may not. Neither of you may know the answer to this, given the situation. But do either of you know what it costs per ton to collect trash in Westford?
Well, I know what we pay per ton when we deliver it to Covanta. We're not with Neswick anymore. We changed incinerators about 5 years ago when our 30-year contract with
I
Neswick
see.
ended. I guess that was 2015. And so this year we are paying $73 a ton for everything that we take up to the incinerator. And just as an idea, we generate about 8,600 tons of trash a year. I haven't done the math recently, but actually it's on our website. A member of our committee, Alan Bugos, keeps us astounding statistics for us. So he has all the monthly rates of what we're paying Richie Rockettenants and his crew to drive around and pick up your trash, and then you can divide that by the tonnage that we collect. So it's on our website. I don't have that on the tip of my tongue, but we certainly do have it on the Recycling Commission website on the town's webpage.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm
Yeah.
going to take a look at that.
No, we track those figures very, very carefully, because the moment that it crosses, that it costs more to recycle,
Right.
that's when our heart breaks.
Right.
So we've been looking at this very carefully for the last several years.
Right.
So it's there, but not in my brain.
So I don't know if you finished your history. I kind of interrupted you on the plastics, but eventually we changed companies.
Right. We kept doing the newspaper recycling as a volunteer drop-off that was all done by volunteers once a month. But we were approached by our trash hauler, actually, Vining Disposal, who thought that they wanted to get into the business of doing collection of recyclables, because that looked like it was going to be a lucrative market. So they made us a proposal to start curbside recycling of just glass, metal, and plastic. The Recycling Commission refers to this as the town's GMP, as opposed to the gross national product, the glass, metals, and plastic. But newspapers was still done voluntarily once a month down on Route 110. So that started, I believe, in 1989, that they called the company Environmental Ideas, with their beautiful bright red and trash trucks. And that's when we started curbside collection of every household, but just glass, metal, and plastic. And then eventually they said they had the capacity to do the newspaper. They were making money on it. And as you said, Chris, we got a check every month based on how much glass, how much metal.
Years
Aluminum
ago,
was
but
very lucrative. We're talking 30 years ago in the 80s. So then all of those commodities were picked up at curbside, the newspapers as well. And that's how it started. Environmental Ideas sold out to another company, I believe Waste Management, actually. So Waste Management became our contractor, and I don't know, it's a little fish swallowed up the other little fish.
Right.
And then Integrated Paper became our contractor for about 15 years until they ceased working 2.5 years ago, and that's when the town went out to bid for Republic. But we then added telephone books were acceptable,
Right.
junk mail became acceptable, all
Yeah.
those things that were not, and that's how the recycling bin turned into a recycling toter, because the amount that each household was generating was so much more than what they put out when we started in the 80s.
You're a great historian.
Oh, thank you.
Well, she actually is our town historian. I don't know if you know
No,
that.
I didn't know that. That's
She's written the book,
Okay.
or books.
Yeah.
I have done that. I haven't written the book of trash, but perhaps that's in the
Maybe
future.
there's a book there, Ellen.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be a big seller.
Yeah, she has a mind. I
could
couldn't
tell.
Yeah,
But
that remembers everything.
one of the reasons, though, that it's been so much fun and so successful is that the residents of Westford have just been right there in step all along.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
never, ever have had people say, "You've got to be kidding." I mean, some people. But by and large, I mean, we have high 70s, low 80% participation. And this was even before it was mandated by
Right,
the town.
right.
So that's why we want it to continue to work.
Yeah.
And that's why residents like the one who sent you the email say, "Tell me what to do now to continue to make it work, but not soak my well dry."
Right.
And so finding that perfect balance is what all of us have to be working
Right,
over with Republic,
Right.
who has been a great ally to help us in this challenge.
There's
to
a
make it
culture in this town
There is.
that is always willing, always
Yeah.
willing.
Yeah.
Chris, we just have about a minute left, and
Okay.
I just want to give you the last word. Is there anything you want the residents of the town to know from your point of view?
Well, I think it goes back to what we said earlier about, what can, really what can the residents do to help for the good of all of the recycling. And it today, again, like I said, it starts in the home, keeping the material clean. The cleaner we can get that material, the better off the long-term outlook is going to look. And again, we're obviously talking about Westwood, but it's certainly a statewide, national campaign. But everybody needs to kind of do their part. Everybody has to try to do the best they can. We know, it's not a perfect world, and we're not going to get every bottle clean. But if everybody can try to just empty, clean, dry to the best that they can, and keep plastic bags out and any other contaminants out of the recycling stream. That's I think that's where we are today, and I think that's kind of the new. It's going to be kind of the new normal, I think, in the recycling world.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming here today.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
I know you drove up from Fall River, so
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ellen, for coming
Always
and
my
helping
pleasure,
us
Joyce.
and educating us about this. For WestfordCAT News, this is Joyce Polino Crane. See you around town.